All right. 15, well, it's 4:29. So, actually, it's now 4:30. Before I hand it over to Mr. Roberts, just want to acknowledge the trophy in the room for all of Huntersville who worked diligently for 6 weeks. We now have a trophy that says that Huntersville is the most fit town. So, excited to present that to the board this evening and to our residents. With that, Mr. Roberts, let's talk about the 2023 potential bond referendum.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we talked about this a little bit at the last board meeting, and sort of the first topic I want to jump on is looking at 2023 bond referendum or potential bond referendum and delve into that a little bit further. And you'll see where management staff has a recommendation for you. And we talked about all the projects and stuff last time. You know what's in the CIP, we got more projects than what we're asking for bond money. But I think what you'll see before you is what staff has recommended is actually something that's doable. You know, if we're gonna go to the voters for approval of bonds, we wanna make sure that the amount of money we're taking to them is something that we can pull off in that time frame. So I'm gonna just hop right into it. I know Jackie and Patty may chime in. So just looking at the last time we did this, the board did this and went to the voters, there were 3 questions, and you can see the amounts beside them. I'm not going to read all these questions. Typically, when you see these questions, the language is fairly similar. You have language in here that allows you flexibility. And you see what we did last time, and what I would tell you when we go to voters, if the board decides to move forward, is we go to the voters with 2 questions. And don't get hung up on the exact language here. So we have bond counsel to help us out with. There has been some changes in the statutes, so we need to make sure we address those changes in the statutes. But you can tell we narrowed 3 down to 2. And part of the reason for that is you can do installment financing on buildings and things like that when you have collateral. Where roads, you know, things changed after 08, 09. You used to be able to put street lights and park benches and things like that up for collateral. You can't do that anymore. Banks are not going to take that. So where we feel comfortable, and there's various reasons behind this, is staff would recommend if board would allow us to move forward, because we've got to find a way to fund these projects, is a $60,000 bond package related to transportation.
Million.
Yeah, 60,000 would be.
You did.
Yeah, the fees may cost more than that, so, sorry, 60 million transportation bond package and a 10 million parks and recreation bond package. And we just eliminated the wording. I guess on the old one had something about Huntersville Market in there. We would take that out, but this would allow flexibility. And like I said, don't get hung up on the exact wording. We use bond counsel to help us with that to make sure that we have all of our bases covered. And then at the very bottom, it's debt. It's not bond. We're not going to the voters asking for that approval, but still on the back burner there as we continue. The board has already directed us to continue moving down the path with Town Hall. That would be an installment financing. So when we were talking about a $100 million debt package, there's your 70 plus 30 is 100 million. But the bonds themselves would be 70 million is what we would, assuming the board allows us to move forward, what we would go to the voters and ask permission for. And, before I keep moving forward, any questions on that? And you've seen this before. This is sort of red is sort of board action. We haven't changed anything here. We'll have Scott Leo and bond counsel to look at it again, make sure we'll continue down the right path. But this comes straight from professionals who do this all the time. And then this is just the second page of it. That same thing you've seen before, really no changes here. This is where we march down that path. If they approve it, if the citizens approve this referendum, after the referendum, there are some actions you have to take after that also. And then you saw a version of this, I think, last time. But if it's a $100 million debt, remember 70 bond, 30 town hall, what does that look like? $100 million debt would result in approximately 2.8 cent tax increase, but this is incrementally over the bond. as they're issued. Remember, I think Rob, maybe Commissioner Kidwell brought up last time that maybe asked a question, what did we do last time, and what do we have in the educational materials, and did we actually raise the tax rate that much? And no, we didn't. And that's pretty standard. What you're gonna see in the educational materials, we're gonna put in there, you know, what we think that maximum amount will be. And then depending on growth and all the different factors that come about, the boards typically don't increase the tax rate that much.
So the 2.8% tax increase for 100 million in debt would be worst-case scenario.
That's what we would propose, worst
Okay.
case scenario.
Commissioner Partee?
Say, Anthony, minus the town hall, this extravagant town hall, what would the tax increase be minus the town hall, the $30 million town hall?
You do a quick number there, Jackie?
Say be 30% of the 2.8.
Yep.
Are we looking at like a 0.5% off, 1/4% off?
Yeah, I'll let Jackie get her
What is it, Commissioner?
0.84.
0.84?
So it'd basically be 2 cents.
2 cents.
Roughly.
Taking it off, okay.
Saying 30%. Looks to me like 30% of the 2.8 is 0.84, so,
Yes.
Roughly
2 cent. 2 cent would be
Approximately 2
yes,
cents.
roughly.
Okay, thank you.
And as you know, with bonds, typically, there's no way we're gonna issue, if the board said move forward with 70 million, issue it first day. The last thing you wanna do is go ahead and issue it. You're not ready for it, and you pay those fees and interest on that, that doesn't make sense. Typically, what you'll see is, depending on how large a package is, it'll be issued over time, 2, maybe 3. Here, we show, an issue of 35 million, is that the exact number we'd issue in 2024? Don't know yet. And then in 2028, potentially issue the other 35 million if the board said move forward. That's what it would look like. But typically, there's 2 to 3. 3 issuances, there's typically a little more fees, and also we try to look at all that. And if we do it in 2 versus 3, we do 2. And those are things we'll look at with bond help and how we're rolling these, how fast we're moving these products, et cetera.
Anthony, that's the last slide we've got on bonds, so if you want to give some direction now about amounts, we'd be glad to take it or move on into the budget discussion.
The last bullet point was just, what if it was 150 in debt? What is the tax rate? So, I mean, obviously, we can play with numbers. But if you ask management, what we would recommend is a 60-10. 60 transportation, 10 parks and rec. That's what we'd recommend, based on the CIP, based on, getting grants and different things like that, and, trying to, there are other opportunities, maybe installment financing for some park projects versus road projects. You have land, or you may have buildings, or you may have other things that may be more attractive for installment financing for parks and rec later down the path. So we'll stop there. One of the goals we wanted to try to achieve tonight, obviously we've got a lot of other things going on in the budget. This is really outside of the budget, because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is, if you say move forward, the voters are going to vote on it in November. And if they did vote for it and it got approved, time we made any payments on that, you're looking at FY25. So I'll be quiet and ask Jackie, myself, Patty, any questions. But because May is rolling pretty quick, if we look back at that calendar, if you want us to do something, we just need to make sure we get prepared.
So my question then to the board is, the 60-10 recommendation, are there any issues with that from anyone? Are there number changes that you want to see? What are your thoughts? Because we need to nail this down. Commissioner Munger?
Sure, I'll crack the seal. I had a question, Jackie and/or Anthony. Mr. Roberts, we spoke earlier about this, the Sanford Highway 73 improvement that NCDOT's doing. Our cost to the town for curb and gutter, sidewalks, things like that was approximately $4 million? 4.5. 4.5? Do you know, and this may not be an easy to answer question, do you know how much NCDOT is spending on 73?
I'd have to probably look at Stephen on that, he can pull it up.
274 million, I think. Somewhere in the ballpark.
It's, I think it's over 200 million, I just can't remember what.
So let's say $250 million amongst friends. For me, one of the things I was pushing is I kept thinking 100 million because we have all these different projects and we could justify 100 million because we have like 150, $200 million worth of projects. And I was really kind of hard set in that. And I'm going to credit I love his email, but I won't say it out loud. Jason Driggers, a constituent who sent us an email all this week and said, why do we have all these projects happening at the same time? Didn't we think out about how to try and stagger these across? And it really gave me perspective. It made me think maybe asking for the 100 plus million is just too much because we can't. When I ran last time, I ran under this ideal that we should be a cone zone because we have so many places that need improvement. There are consequences to that, and the idea that 73 is going to be under construction and there's going to be, let's face it, 250 million plus worth of construction happening there, and then we're going to have some other construction happening at the same time. I conceded earlier to Mr. Roberts that maybe that number should be down to 60 to 80. And when he said that he was going to propose to 60 to 10, I said, yeah, I'm not going to argue that. And that's just from my perspective in terms of we're going to have a lot of construction. At some point, it's going to hit a breaking point, and maybe pushing for the outer limit is too much. So I'm on board with the 60-10. All that to say.
Well, I will say that we did have things, we thought we had things lined up, right? Being purposeful. And what I'm constantly reminded is that we are at the pleasure of NCDOT, and when they choose to start their projects. You know, the one that's sitting out here right now with all the cones was supposed to have started 6 years ago. Like, we thought we had them lined up, and that changed. So I don't disagree with you in your assessment.
Mayor, I was gonna say, Rob was pretty close, he just had two numbers moved around, 257 instead of 275, is that right? Still pretty good.
Apologize for being
Commissioner Boone?
Lance, I think I can answer your question why there's so much going on right now.
Yep.
Is that the state changed their formula on how to do the projects from the good old boy projects to data-driven.
Yeah.
And now that data-driven was driven, most of those projects to North Mecklenburg County and the more prosperous places of the state. And I think that even though it's a bad thing because we got all these cones, once we get past this construction phase, whenever that might be, or how long that is, I think it's gonna be good
I
once
do
it gets
disagree
through.
with that.
Okay?
Yeah, I just a little worried about having us trying to compound, because we know 73 is going to be
Right.
something.
And then DOT ran out of some money there for a while, and they had to slow everything up.
Yep.
COVID hit, and now it's all coming back together again, but I kind of believe that they're not gonna have enough manpower or equipment to get all these things done in a timely manner.
Yeah.
So where are we at?
I feel much better about this.
Okay, so 60-10,
60-10, I'm agreeing.
Commissioner Kidwell?
I'm I like to drop 20 off the transportation. Because in the list in our CIP, we got $18 million just for the Hager Cook Road. You know, we're still contemplating building a fire station on land we don't own. That's $20 million. You know, let the developers build it out there. That shouldn't be on the CIP.
I would say, just to respond to that, Commissioner Kidwell, actually, if we were doing all the transportation projects, it'd be more like 80 million. If you add all of the other plus the other, I think it was like 78 million. So, that very well may be what you said, that 20 million, we're not gonna get to it.
I'm more at 45 cap on this thing, not 70.
45,
Well, not, I'm talking about the bond.
45 in combined Parks and Rec and
Yes.
transportation.
Anyone else? Commissioner Partee?
Oh, I said it. I said
Oh,
it.
did
70,
you?
yeah, 70. I'm at,
You were there, okay.
Yeah, the recommendation that the
Commissioner
town manager,
Kovacs?
right.
You're good. I'm just going back around. Commissioner Phillips?
I need a budget to look at before I can agree to bonds.
My understanding is they're not tied together at this point.
But
because-
spending, it's still spending. Like, this is like saying what's in your debit account is not affected by your credit card account. I need to see it all.
So the only time you will see this is typically in the five-year financial forecast. So, like I say, what I don't know is, will the citizens approve it? So if we never get to the citizens approve it, it never hits our five-year financial forecast. So in our five-year financial forecast, we will make some assumptions that they will approve it, but if they don't, that gets wiped out. And like I say, and Jackie can chime in, but the debt service payments on that, assuming that the citizens approved it, and assuming, we issue in those timeframes of 24 and 2028, those debt service payments would be, twice a year, Jackie? So you won't see those hit until FY '25. So if this board is voting on the FY '24 budget, there will be no dollars associated in FY '24 with a bond because the voters wouldn't approve until November. And even if it does, once you get through all that, and the actual debt service payments would not actually hit our books until '25 and beyond.
So I make a comment about everybody's comments. Lance's, I'm worried that's not enough. Historically, we have gone to the voters' ballpark once a decade. There's no rule that says you have to do that. If you get your bond capacity used and you need more money, you could go back and ask voters before then. I would advise you, most Parks and Rec projects and many, like Town Hall, you can do an installment financing for, and you wouldn't need a bond for, but so there are other financing mechanisms that are not just these that you could use in the next 10 years. Regarding Commissioner Kidwell's comment about take that one project off and that would take out ballpark 18 million. Think of the number of projects that show up intermittently in a five-year forecast. The example that comes quickly to mind to me is the idea that we might take over Gilead Road. If there's any expenses associated with that, there's nothing in the five-year CIP or future related to that. So projects are going to shift and slide. Some will think of something smart to do and need to do that, need a funding source. So don't get too wedded to that list of projects. And to Commissioner Phillips' comment about I'd like to see a budget, to me, the financial advisor does really smart information, and to me, what he has done is said, looking in isolation, if your concern about the tax rate is exclusively associated with a debt service payment, then it's 2.8 cents. So ballpark 3 cents to do the 100 million. Now, I get nervous when he talks because Jackie Patty put budgets together, one of which you'll see next Monday. We almost never look at, well, what's just the capital or the debt implications for this, because there's personnel, so we likely are to add positions and add what we pay employees. So there's personnel expenses that 2.8 cent tax increase does not consider. And there's operating implications, like the garbage contract's going to be more expensive. There are other operating things that might happen. The add of positions, the firefighter discussion. Don't think that that means that over the next 5 years we'd never increase taxes more than on a ceiling amount of 3 cents, because there will be other things that come up that we will need to find a funding source for if we're going to do them.
I think the key here is what we're trying to decide is, are we going to take a bond package to the voters in November? The voters will decide whether they want it or not, unless you decide, look, we don't want to take, we have to find a way to pay for these transportation projects. We're not going to be able to pay cash for it. all these projects. I think the list is 200-some million. So even if you legally could take what you have in fund balance, that's a fourth of the way there. So even if you legally could, you can't. There's just no way to pay for all these transportation dollars. Now, it's great, we get CRTPO dollars, but half the time, once we get those, it's paying for the cost of the project going up. That's basically where it works. It never pays for it completely. You always, things are probably, they may level set some, but won't see road projects going down. They may level set and things stay like they are, but that's probably about it. So we've got to find a way to pay for these road projects or start to shut them down. But we'll never get to all those projects, even if you approve the 60 in transportation. I mean, at today's estimates with some tiny escalator in there, there's 78 million plus of road projects in there.
Commissioner Boone?
Right, I kind of go along the way Stacy's thinking on this. I mean, right now we got 2.8 on debt service on this, on these GO bonds. We don't know what the debt service is on the town hall yet. And we don't know what the rest of what your income is gonna look like for the next budget year. We haven't seen that yet. And we've got to, if I say yes to 2.8, then you come up, well, we're gonna need two more cents of this, and then we're up to 5 cents, and then I'm not gonna go that way.
So you're gonna see, I'm gonna recommend 19 cent. 17.6 cent is revenue neutral, 19 cent will be in the manager's recommended budget. So there's no 2.8, there is no 5 cent, whatever. Now, you can raise it up, but I'm recommending at this point in time, 17.6 goes to 19. That's what, 7.9% increase, 8% increase roughly, somewhere in there. So that's on the table. That's what I'm gonna recommend at this point in time, unless we throw some things in there that I haven't accounted for. That's where we would be. And like I said, we don't have to make any decisions tonight, but as we get closer and closer and closer to this, we've got to be able to bring you back what you need to move forward. But if we do not do a bond package, guys, I'm just telling you, road projects will come to a halt. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it.
Commissioner Munger?
If we, or a majority of us, had an objection about the HFFA being in the Parks and Rec bonds, could we strike that line? And I don't know.
Yes,
I'm
you
throwing
can.
it out there.
I mean, that's a point of contention for me too. That's what I'm sitting up here whispering to him about, because it's not for everybody. And if you're gonna pass bonds, it should be stuff, like, I don't know how I feel about bonds, but I don't think it's right to be pushing for something to have bond money that's not for all the citizens that are voting for it. I think HFFA, especially being public-private partnership, should be treated in its own entity and not in things that other citizens end up paying for in the bonds. I mean, I know they pay for it in the budget and the taxes, but that just is not hitting right with me.
Appreciate it for elaborating on that, and I'm in agreement.
And Mayor, just remember this, only thing we struck was that piece out from last year. We left last time. We left everything else in there.
Right.
Those are things we would work through as a board, that allows maximum flexibility if you wanted to, if we wanted to pay for the HVAC, if that would have had to come up during this time, or roof repairs and things like that. But that's entirely up to the board on how we word that stuff.
Commissioner Bertie? Do you have your hand raised?
I'm still thinking, thank you.
Okay. So, and my understanding is you're going back, working with bond counsel to clean up the wording.
Yes, although, for flexibility's sake, we left that in there, but for the comment, if the consensus take it out, by all means, let's take it out. It's easier to edit this now than it will be on May 15th in the packet.
What does everyone else feel about that? And removing HFFA out of the parks package?
Okay, I'm done, thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Bertie?
The citizens of this town uses the facility, and I think we had this debate last, previous meeting. I know Commissioner Phillips was not here, regarding the HVAC system. myself as a member and also of HHFA who constantly uses it and being there on weekends, I see the full use that this community participates in. And us and myself, not us, I don't want to include anybody else, believe me, I'm trying to be condescending, but myself, who uses that facility and see the professionals that come into this town, especially Olympic professionals, and the facility has been used as a training and also a trial facility for Olympians, is a boom for me for this town. It also puts this town on the map. So therefore, to supplement HHFA is for myself, a need as commissioner and for our community and for our citizens to use. So I would like to see it in there. It's up to my rest of my other commissioners, but we discussed this last time. We approved the HVAC system. And moving forward, there's always room, and for any budget, we need a little cushion for any project, because nothing is written in stone. I like what our manager has brought to us as far as the 70 million. We gotta come up with an approval, because we are on a time frame. Ms. Hoffman, she does all the numbers, she's very expert, she's the expert in it. And I'm given the full confidence, my confidence, that what they presented to us is viable for our community.
Again, I would say we're looking for guidance. Ask Anthony to flip back to the slide that had the 2012 issue on it. I wasn't here when the HFFA
Thank you.
bonds were issued. But I believe of the 5 million in Parks and Recreation bonds, I believe 500,000 of that was used at HFFA. And whatever the number was that was used at HFFA, the HFFA portion that's outstanding according to our June 30, 22 financial statements is 306,605. So if you're willing to rely on my memory when I wasn't here when stuff was issued, ballpark 10% of it was used for HFFA.
Well, I guess one of my questions then would be, regardless of whether HFFA is listed there, it's still part of our recreation facilities. So does it not apply regardless of whether it's specifically listed or not? I'm asking the question.
You probably could apply. You don't have to have a specific spell out. What we would do on stuff like that is specifically ask the bond counsel just to make sure. Just so that I'm not telling you yes, but typically, it's like the other stuff you see in here. You got paving, street lights, bench, you've got all sorts of stuff. Anything related to roads is under transportation, and probably anything related to parks and recreation would be a fall under that too, but we would ask Scott Lee.
Commissioner Munger?
I think Commissioner Kovacs had something. I've spoken enough.
I was gonna say that I agree with taking it out because while it is a Huntersville property, it is a private business where you have to pay private memberships to be able to attend it. So I understand it's in the heart of Huntersville, but you can't attend that like you can the rec center or Veterans Park.
And HFFA is open up to tourism dollars as well.
It is open up to tourism dollars, and we certainly could utilize those dollars in the future for any needs that happen at HFFA. Commissioner Boone?
I believe that if you have a child that's plays Little League or soccer or something like that, those are private companies too, that they pay to play on town fields, and it's very similar to what HFFA is doing. I think that we're trying to make a athletic district in this town. This is Rob's idea of not only we have a rec department, we've got swimming pools, high dives and everything, and we've got to support those projects. And I am not in favor of taking it out.
Commissioner Kidwell, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll share them.
Please share.
I don't disagree with what my fellow commissioners over here are saying. But the commissioners on this side make a good point too, especially what Commissioner Boone just said about the other fields, to soccer, baseball, softball, volleyball, et cetera, et cetera. One thing we have to keep in mind is we're putting that contract out for bid. And there's nothing written in stone that says that the town of Huntersville won't take over that facility. As I stare at Michael J. Cox. And it would fall under the recreation facilities. I mean, you could take it out and change the word to say recreational facilities, and it still could be, money could still be programmed to it. I mean, bonds, this is my first one doing it, but I've listened to someone way smarter about it, and it's all about the words, it's all about the verbiage. Yeah, we could take everything else can go away, you know, and you can just say recreation, you know, cost of upkeep, construction, acquiring recreation facilities, athletic fields, greenways and trails. And that pretty much sums that bond right up. Take everything else out. The only reason we put so many words in this here, in these things is to CYA. So I don't think taking it out is going to accomplish anything, but also that, you know, and maybe I'm wrong, but even if money has to be spent over there, it still has to come in front of the board.
Absolutely.
And we have to know the funding source, and that gives anybody up on this board the opportunity at that point to say, you know what, I don't want to use the bond money for that. It's not right. So I'm not in favor of changing it, or if we're going to change it as a board, we change all the words and just kind of streamline it there. Either way, it can't be used.
So the only other caveat to it is that we own that facility, it's ours, and we have a responsibility to maintain that facility. So having the flexibility of where dollars are coming from, maximum flexibility, is something that we really need to consider. All right. Anyone else? Are we giving you any direction at all? I'm not quite
What if I have
clear.
clear direction, because I have 2 meetings. Well, I guess next meeting is May 1st, right? The second one is at action that says 5:15. I probably need to get my ducks in a row if we're going.
So can we do a straw poll really quick?
There you go.
Can we do that, just to kind of gauge where everyone is in regards to the transportation bonds and the and let's just we'll take them separate. The transportation bonds at the 60 million and recommended amount. Where is this board currently? Who is in favor of the 60 million at this point for transportation bonds? 1, 2, 3, I got 3, all right. And on the Parks and Rec bond of 10 million, where are we at with the 10 million for Parks and Rec? 1, 2, and 3, okay. So we do have a little bit more work to do.
Madam Mayor, could we do another straw vote and to see if we're going to keep HFFA in the wording for the Park and Rec?
I can do that, but I'd really like to go back to the amounts first and see, I would love to hear somebody who is not in favor of the 60 million, what dollar amount you're looking at for the transportation bonds. I'd like to hear a dollar amount.
50.
So I hear 50 million. Is, all right, so 50 million? Anyone interested in discussing 50 million at this point?
I'm at 40. So
You said 45 earlier.
I said 45 total, and if you listen.
45 total, all
I'm
right.
gonna start throwing stuff.
All right, so we're gonna have to come back and we'll need to do this again offline to get everybody on the same page, I do think. I don't want to take up any more time talking about, we need to move on to budget. Before we do, let's go and talk about leaving HFFA in the wording, just so that you have some direction this evening for the bonds. those who, after this discussion, interested in leaving HFFA in the bond wording? Show of hands, straw poll, 3 and 3. All right, so we still have work to do. Sweet.
Good times.
All right, so it's clear as mud up to this point. We have 2 meetings.
I have a question for you.
Certainly.
Is it, so we have people who are actively members of HFFA voting on this, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay,
And Mayor, we'll try to continue to work with board members, see if we can get there, and if not, come 5:15, it drops.
Right.
Now, what we'll do is Jackie's gonna do a little homework to find out if this calendar can be pushed any. What do we have to know as far as
Cannot be.
amount? But, before Monday, the 1st, we will see what we can find out on, can this be pushed or crunched anymore? To give more time, but this is, I'm telling you, there's no number in the FY '24 budget, just to let you know, no matter what you decide, whether it's 60, 0, whatever, there's no number in this FY '24 budget you're gonna be voting on.
So to be clear, the dollars that these projects, these dollars here, the 70 million staff recommendation, is for future projects. We're just going through the process to get the voters to approve funding for those projects, correct?
What'll have to happen is, let's just say the board says, we're not moving forward to push a bond forward. What I'm gonna have to go back into CIP and look at, and if you recall, red was some form of bond funding, et cetera. So I'll have to go back in there, Jackie, myself, and Patty, and sit down and say, okay, where are we in the stage of that project? Can that project stop, or do we look out here at some of these other projects that are in black and use that money for those, to continue those projects along? Because projects are in different phases. So we may go back to the board and say, to the shuffling board here and say, okay, we haven't started on that project per se, so if we had bond money tied to that, I'm gonna finish this project out because I've spent $2 million on it, and I got 10 more to go, or whatever. And that's what we'll have to go through and look at. Like the project, Commissioner Kidwell mentioned, that project is, we hadn't even sniffed the paper hardly on it. We put a number on the paper, but that's so far out, those projects will get killed from the get-go.
And at the end of the day, these are planning tools. We're not committing to spending those dollars at this point.
Citizens may not approve it, so
Correct.
we gotta get it to them for them to approve it.
Mayor,
Just a second, Commissioner.
I was just gonna ask, since you asked what people are comfortable with transportation, could you do the other half, just so I have a mental
Sure,
of the,
I can certainly do that. Let's talk Parks and Rec. If it's not 10, who's in favor of the 10 million? And I think we got 3 and 3. So what's another number?
5.
All right. And how many folks are interested in 5? 2. Okay.
did you have a number for transportation? Sorry, I was.
All right. Commissioner Kidwell, you had a point you wanted to make?
I did.
To the point, yeah, I know this is a planning tool, and the citizens do vote for this, but if we're gonna take any amount of money to them, I think it's good to have projects laid out.
Well, I'm sorry.
I would
didn't
say
hear you.
have some projects laid out.
Oh, we will. In education
Yeah.
materials, you have to.
Yeah, because we just, the town manager has talked about one of the projects on the CIP, and we haven't even looked at paperwork or anything else on that just yet, So I don't want us going out there on whatever amount this board agrees upon, or the majority of the board agrees upon, and then someone says, well, oh, that project is gonna be on there, that project's gonna be on there. I don't wanna be, not project specific, but
We
very.
have to give them the way the 2012 bonds were laid out, is we gave examples of projects that would be completed with these dollars. We
I would
didn't
say
get
we
all
gave-
of those projects done, to be fair, because we ran out of money to get them done. But
We've kept the educational materials for the 2012 bonds on our website. You could go look at right now during this meeting. And my recollection is that it says, projects such as, and it didn't say, we will deliver this project, because we don't know what we don't know.
exactly.
So you'll have all your education materials that go out there, post online. Some people do brochures, videos, all sorts of things. The towns do all sorts of stuff, but it would be such as, because you get into that project and you run into quicksand, and let's say it was a $5 million project becomes a $50 million project. I imagine the board at that time is gonna say, well, we're not doing that project if it eats up all the money. We're gonna move on to some of these other projects that are out there. And that's why, even if the voters approve this, et cetera, future boards are gonna have to make decisions on, when we issue, not gonna be this board, not be the staff, on when we issue, what those projects are. You gotta approve contracts. Just because voters approve this, you still gotta go through your normal processes, everything. Getting contracts, bringing it for the board, getting approval, whatever board's in place to make those decisions. They may not like that project. The next board may say, we didn't like that project out of the 50 you got listed up here, we're moving to the next one. That's a board decision to make.
And that's the reason I say this is more of a planning tool and setting some benchmarks. Because we all know that, in 10 years, who knows what projects are gonna be before the board? In 7 years, who knows what projects are gonna be before a board sitting here? But setting the stage to give some forward-thinking thought to those projects is very important. So this dialogue is extremely important. So I'd love to hear more conversation around it and not less.
Is there anything else that the board needs from staff to help you make those decisions? We can bring back more information, but we are getting down to the wire if we're moving for that, assuming that is rock solid calendar that it came from the Scott Leo. If you need more stuff, let us know. Otherwise, I'll call you, twist your arm, do whatever we need to do, put you in the headlock. But we'll see where we need to go.
All right.
All right. Well, we will move on to some items that are in the budget. We're gonna hopefully get a couple of easy ones here. A couple softballs maybe. You know how we'll talk about some of the larger ticket items or some things that are coming before you. And Jackie, I'm sure, and Patty are gonna chime in, but a couple things that'll be coming before you, either May 1st, May 15th meeting, is electric rates. We look at electric rates every year. Commissioner Boone helped serve on the board, and Jackie, in various capacities. And if you recall, David Lucor is going to do a cost of service study. That cost of service study is complete. What you'll see is no change to the residential rate that we would bring back to the board. But we will look to, out of that cost of service study, to increase industrial rates by 2%, just to break even. Well, just to let you know, industrial rates, we only have very few customers, like less than on this one hand. So when we come back to you, it's half of what's on this one hand. There's only a few customers that fall in that category. So either May 1st or May 15th, it's probably May 15th. May 15th, David Lucor will present to you and ask board to approve these electric rates. Residential, no increase, just a couple customers on the industrial rate. So hopefully, don't ask me a ton of questions tonight, because you're gonna see this again. But go ahead. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Roberts, what's the difference between industrial rate and commercial rate?
So there are various classes that we have. You have a residential, you'll have a small commercial, maybe a medium and a large commercial. I can't remember all the categories. And then maybe a small industrial and a large industrial. And depending on, they fit in these various categories based on the amount of kilowatts per hour that they use. And you'll hear more about that when David comes in to tell you those differences of what's the difference in a small commercial and a large commercial, small industrial and a large industrial.
Okay, so
So-
now,
so-
does our commercial industry, what is their rate compared, what do they contribute to the tax base?
So I don't have their rate and how much revenue each one of those classes generate right here, but we'll be able to show you that on what each one, what each rate is for each customer class, and then what is the new rate proposed to be for the two industrials. So we can make sure that we have that for you at the 15th, that will break that out.
But the proposal I would expect David Lucor to bring you on May 15th would be for an increase of 2%
In commercial?
in
Industrial.
industrial.
Just industrial.
So
I
that-
understand industrial, but
That
commercial-
would be like rentals.
Yeah.
Used to be packed with rentals.
Same thing, industrial, think manufacturing as opposed to
A food
commercial.
line or
Commercial
Or
office
drug-
buildings and
drugstore.
so forth, yeah,
There you
okay,
industrial is going to be heavy manufacturing typically.
thank you, asked and answered.
The next thing that will be coming before you is land development fees. As you're building a building in town, whether it's adding on a porch, whether it's building a subdivision, et cetera, we have land development fees. We brought Louisa or land development in-house. I'm trying to remember how many years ago now. Is it 3? 2019. So we brought that in-house. And we based our fees off looking at the county. The county used to provide that service for us. We brought that in-house. We thought we could do a better job from a customer service standpoint, and that, try to do as much one-stop shop here. Kevin, Stephen, Jack, and folks have looked at the land development fees. I think Stephen is going to bring to you, is that May 15th also? Or was that May 1st? I can't remember. May 1st. All right, so May 1st, Stephen will come before you to show you what those proposed fee increases are. We'll have it broken down as probably a 2-page list of what the fees are, what they were, how do we compare to the county, and what the proposed increase is. I think Stephen, Jackie, Patty would say, and Kevin and Jack and all would say that our fees are at the county or lower, not higher. I don't know if there's any higher. Stephen says no. So you'll see that list. You can ask away any questions on what those are. There's probably, I'm gonna guess, 8 to 10 categories or something like that, line items that may change. But we'll have that for you to look at on May 1st. So I just want to give you what's coming down the line on that.
It might or might not matter to you, but when David Lucor comes to you on May 15th, we have summer rates that are in effect June, July, August, and September. So he's likely to ask you to make that effective with all bills whose usage begins June 1st. The county bills for us many of the land development fees. They need a period of time to get their rates updated in their system. And so when Stephen comes to you on May 1st, earlier, he's likely to ask you to make it effective at some date in the fall, September, October. So be aware of that. Some of you may have had a private conversation with me where I pulled a number out of my hair and said, hey, I think the land development fees won't generate more than 30 or 50,000. I was wrong. So we're guesstimating it would generate more. However, think about that. This is for fees levied in the future, so we really don't know how many developers are gonna submit how many types of plans, so that's just an estimate too.
So on the 1st, May 1st, Stephen will be here to talk you through all that. So to jump on a couple of other items in the budget, and of course, the manager's recommended budget will be presented Monday, May 1st. We'll have ample opportunity to have other workshops as we dig deeper into that. The actual budget public hearing is May 15th, and then we would propose to come back to the board. Is it June 1st? Is that the first meeting, June 6th? I can't remember what the first Monday is in June. 5th. Is when we will come back to the board and ask the board to adopt the budget. But a couple of things I wanted to address. I want to say last year, Emily, you have to help me out. Last year, legislation sort of changed on how you deal with external agencies and the budget, et cetera. You remember towns were sort of wrestling with okay, do we do this as part of the budget, and how do you recuse yourself, et cetera? And Emily, please jump in, any of Jackie. But towns were doing it different. A lot of towns were taking and handling this and said, you know what, we're gonna take this outside of the budget process so that, Rob, I'm gonna pick on you if it's okay. Not that you do this, but, so let's say Rob had an agency in there, I don't know, it was one of the agencies asking for $1,000, Anthony's Soup Kitchen. And Rob said, you know what, I just don't think we should be doing Anthony's Soup Kitchen.
That's fair.
We got a $100 million budget, and Rob gets hung up on Anthony's Soup Kitchen for $1,000, and doesn't want to vote for the budget. And a $100 million budget, $1,000 is a lot of money, don't get me wrong. With my kids, I can eat, but when we're dealing with a $100 million budget, we don't want to get hung up on a $1,000 line item for Anthony's Soup Kitchen. So what a lot of towns did is said, you know what, we're gonna break that outside. We're gonna get through the budget, and we're gonna come back after we got the budget, and we're gonna deal with these external agencies one by one. So, they're on Stacy now, so Stacy's with a particular external agency, she can recuse herself, go in there, vote on that, and if they were asking for $10,000, we vote on that, do a budget for that particular one. If Commissioner Fortier's involved in another, he needs to recuse himself, same thing, we go down the line and deal with them like that, and take it out of the budget process. And you still have to do a budget amendment. But even if you funded every dollar they asked for, I think it was roughly $240,000. I doubt we will, but I'm just saying if you were, but you deal with that outside the budget process, and we don't get hung up in the minutia of maybe, I just didn't like the name of the agency. We still will address what we fund them by, but it takes it out of the big picture of the budget and allows us to deal with it separately.
So Anthony, 7 calendar days from today, when board members have their line item budget, that's the manager's recommended budget, what they will see is the original budget and how much was funded in the original budget in the current budget year, and they will see zeros in FY '24. And after that June 5th meeting, when the board adopts budget, we'll either come back on June 19th or we'll come back in July, and we'll have 7 or 15, whatever the number is now, different budget amendments prepared that says, let's fund Ada Jenkins X amount, and somebody says, yeah, I'm on their board of directors, then we'll recuse you, and then the remaining board members will vote on whether or not to fund that budget amendment for Ada Jenkins, and we'll do that for each of the other agencies.
Yeah, we have 10, I think there were 10 requests. That's how I would recommend we deal with it moving forward, and Emily, you can tell me if I'm went astray or it's illegal, legal, et cetera.
Anthony, what's the total sum of the 10?
The total request was 244,000 was the total request. The a budget approved in '23 was 175,000.
And that's consistent with the information in the first meeting in April's packet when the folks came in and made their presentation to the board.
That's correct, 244. Unless Patty tells me I'm wrong, that's what I have on this sheet. So that's what I would recommend, unless you tell me otherwise. That's how I'm after just sort of talking to other towns, talking to Emily, and just sort of seeing how the process, and saw the process we went through. I see why maybe towns decide to go that route. And so I would recommend we move in that direction. Obviously, we can always change back to following year and say, well, Anthony, we hated that, and want to go back the other way. But I just think it takes out, those issues. Unless you tell me absolutely not, the majority of you tell me absolutely not, that's the direction that staff will move in on that. I just wanted you to know that so that you say, well, this is a little bit different than before.
So is everyone good with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Very
thank you. So just moving on to positions that, and you've probably heard us talk about these various positions, these are the positions that you will see, the new positions that are in FY '24 budget. I think you've heard Kevin Fox talk about fleet management multiple times. So there are 2 positions in here on fleet management. A risk manager, which falls under HR, and we can get you details if you want to hear Laura stand up and give you great details on risk manager. We can do that in a second. And then senior park repair technician. And what you may say, well, Anthony, why do you got the 2 bullets broken out? One is because the ones on the top bullet are general fund. In the second bullet, land development erosion control inspector, we pay for those positions typically out of the fee base, out of the land development fees. So basically that position would pay for itself, land development fees. That's why we have those broken out separately. So you should see in your budget, if there's more than 5 new people in there, then I don't know about it, but these are the 5 that are proposed to be in the budget. And we can talk about those as much as you like. We've got department heads here, but there shouldn't be any surprises that I'm aware of in these 5. You should have heard this at some point in time during the budget process, but some of you, if I had to guess, some of you may ask more about what is risk manager. And more than happy, maybe Laura can tell us a little bit on that if you like a little more information on that.
So I know we talked about the fleet management, we talked about park repair technician during retreat. Are there any other questions, Commissioner Kidwell?
Could you refresh my memory on the erosion control inspector?
Say that again, the erosion control inspector.
Is that-
So Kevin, come on up. I'll let you talk for a second. It's Ann times 2?
So in our land development department currently, we have 1 erosion control inspector. What we have found is she's becoming inundated by projects. She's got well over 100 projects that she has to routinely inspect, and she has to do a monthly inspection if it doesn't have a problem. And if the sites do have problems, she has to go a lot more frequently. She also does pre-construction conferences for every new project that's underway. So what we've seen in our land development, as we've been doing this since 2019, is that one position just is extremely taxed. So we're hoping to add an assistant to her, to Ann, who currently holds that position, to give her a helping hand.
All right, thank you.
Kevin, will that keep us on task with going through the process of development projects?
Yes, so.
Because I'm assuming we're seeing some delays.
There are sites that we're just not getting to every
Okay.
month.
Okay.
And some of that, we're able to manage those now. We're actually bringing in some of the other of our inspection team are able to give a helping hand occasionally when they have to. But in these heavy periods of rain that we've seen, that position gets very, very busy. And then that's also the position that, the citizen complaints as far as mud on the road and stuff like that. That position has to go investigate all those calls as well, so.
Okay. Commissioner Booth?
I got a question for Jackie. You said the control inspector is paid out of what pot of money?
Land development fees. So the fees Anthony talked about on the previous slide.
We just talked about, well, if we're gonna put this person on the payroll, I don't think we should put them on until those new fees go into effect. And the second question is, I guess this is for Laura, tell me why we need a risk manager.
Mr. Reed, if I could address your comment, I think that we have a little bit of a fund balance that would be used to pay for that position if we wanted to fund it July 1st.
True, and the application process and passing the drug test and getting somebody started, that takes a period of time. So
Okay.
pretty much after budget adoption, I'd recommend we go ahead and start advertising and start that process.
So the risk manager position would be a specialized position that would take some relief off of the HR function and departments in addressing both reactively and proactively our safety and risk across the town. Jackie just mentioned drug screening. That's something that we can continually be looking at things like the respirator program with the police department, making sure that we're staying on track with the requirements for written program for fit testing, for medical evaluations, excuse me, as we bring on potentially firefighters and have potentially more risk there. Just having someone who is specialized in risk management to help us address those types of things. Right now, we have a contract with a safety company that helps supplement us and keep us on track with some of those requirements that we have with OSHA, Department of Labor. So this would be someone internally that would help us address those on a day-to-day basis.
And that whole package would cost what to employ somebody for that position?
I estimated with everything 75,000.
Thank you.
75 gross, we would alter our contract some with the safety consultant, so it wouldn't be a net impact of 75,000.
Correct.
Any other questions? Saying none.
Jackie, you want to do a little talking, or you want me?
Yes, awesome.
I
I
know
get to
you
talk
want
about
to.
ARPA again. Yay. So, likely, perhaps you've heard that there is legislative proposal that the government might, what they're referring to as claw back any ARPA funds that have not been spent. In our FY23, in our current year's budget, we received $4.7 million directly from the federal government. And that is below the limit. And so what we did was technically referred to as supplant. And so we used that $4.7 million to pay some police salaries this year. That 4.7 that we would have spent paying police salaries then becomes freed up in the general fund budget so we can spend on something else like capital. And that's what we did this year. We also received one of two agencies in North Carolina that because we were a non-entitlement entity, we were told we get one number from the federal government. They reduced it a lot by $12 million. And so we went to the state and said, state, will you please make us whole? And they said, sure, we'd be glad to. So we got $12 million from the state in this year's budget. I think the state would claim that they don't have those funds to claw back because they paid them to us. We, staff, is of the opinion that we're in the best protected position if we say, you know what, we're going to spend, we're going to supplant, just like we did last year, the 4.7, we're going to supplant the general fund salaries in FY24 so that if somebody says, hey, all that unspent money you might have, rather than identify a project and bid it, and it's going to be a capital project that's going to go over some period of time, if we will have effectively spent it, there'd be absolutely no question about whether or not there were any funds to claw back to any other agency. So it's our recommendation we do that in FY24.
But you
Yes,
just, you're reminding them, because board's already told us supplant the 4, supplant the 12. You're reminding them you're gonna see it in the budget as supplant.
The supplanting of the 12. The supplanting of the 4.7 happened in FY23, current year's budget, done, historical event. We filed the report, and the report says, acknowledges we have filed the report. So now we've got the 12, and it's our recommendation, we do the exact same thing with the 12 that we do with the 4.7 to remove any ambiguity about whether or not it's spent and thereby ineligible for clawback.
I guess my question, and maybe I misinterpreted, the 4.7 from last year was below a,
$10 million threshold.
the 12 is over that. Do we have any issues there?
No, because there are two different sources of funds. Technically, one came from the federal government, one came from the state. We're told that, coupled with the fact that, help me, Emily, the state considers the funds a beneficiary. We're not the grantor. That causes a big difference.
And I guess the question I had about the numbering was that we could use that much, that amount of money to supplant as opposed to specific
For
projects?
funds received directly from the federal government, my understanding is the supplant maximum was $10 million. So our 4.7 plus our 12 would exceed 10.
Right.
But the state has said that they consider us a beneficiary, not a grantee. And therefore, they consider their money spent because they gave it to us.
So So we can spend it in whatever way we see fit.
The state has expressed that they believe the money is spent because they've given it to us. We want to make sure they don't change their mind later and say, you know what, there's been a different interpretation. You know, turnover, somebody else has come in and said, you know what, we shouldn't have considered you a beneficiary, we should have considered you a grantee, and thereby we want to subject you to different standards. And so we believe we're in the most protected position if we go ahead and supplant the 12. Emily, I endorse you correcting any of that I misspoke. Okay. Yes, sir. Mr. Martine.
Jackie, are we restricted on how we spend those funds from the state?
The state says no, but if we subject ourselves to the same supplanting for the 4.7 and the 12, we believe that we have created as much, for lack of a better term, insurance to insulate ourselves from a different future interpretation.
Okay, any other questions at this point? Seeing none. Let's move on.
You want me to tackle this one, Jackie, or you want to keep
We've
running?
met multiple times about the solid waste contract. Solid waste contract will cost us more money in FY '24. That is an example of an expense that we believe is going up in FY '24. The dispatch contract, which we currently have with Charlotte, we believe is an additional example of an appreciable increase in price that operating that you will see an increase for in FY '24. You're welcome to add
So solid
color
waste.
detail to those.
So solid waste, obviously, you know, we're working through the contract, Kevin and his team, Emily, Bobby, Jackie, maybe Patty, quite a few folks working on the contract. I think we have our first or second draft back, Kevin? First draft back, so we're working through that with the existing contractor. But you gotta remember, we're taking on new houses, price has gone up. It's probably a $700,000 impact, in this year's budget. Patty, Jackie, am I sound about right? So roughly $700,000 increase right there, regarding solid waste.
Anthony, that
Dispatch,
700,000 includes both the increase in number of residents and the
That's
increase
correct.
rate.
that's right. 700,000 is the impact to this budget with that new contract, with new houses, et cetera, coming on board, everything. Dispatch renewal, I don't know how far we get into weeds on this, but we are, just like the ETJ contract that will be coming back to you for police services here in maybe the next couple of weeks or so, maybe May 15th, June 1st. Dispatch.
I don't think that policing the ETJ will be May 1st. I would guess it to be May 15 or June 5.
So like the police ETJ contract, which is, looks like we're right now proposed to get the same amount as last year. I think that was 1.4 million. Their proposal is to give us 1.4 million again to police the ETJ. Now, I'll have to put a muzzle on Jackie because she may light a fire in the room because she doesn't agree with that number, and I kind of agree with her. So I don't know that we're getting as much love as we would like with that particular contract, but we'll continue to work through that. I will say we're at least getting the same amount. As of maybe Friday, this past Friday on the dispatch contract, we're definitely not getting love. I can't remember the exact amount. Maybe 358,000 or so is what we pay now. Does that sound about right, or am I way off? 330. The proposal is to more than double or so, which is not good, and not very happy with that. And we are looking at options. Is probably the best way to put that. I know these gentlemen right here are looking at options now. I don't know what they look like. Don't know what those cost options are. So if I went any further than that, I would be waffling. So I'll stop there just to let you know that that one is a cost increase too. It'll go along with the solid waste we knew was coming. Dispatch, we did not know. And we've got more work to do on that.
Anthony, what's the length of the new contract with dispatch?
3 years.
Thank you.
Under a new proposal, the 560% increase is only good for a year.
So the new proposal, 1 year, typically been 3 years. But it's a strong amount, as you heard the chief say, that we need to look at other options to,
So gentlemen, the current contract expires June 30, 23, and this is not a surprise, we knew that, and we talked to them, and we, thought we might renew. The price is a little bit of a eyebrow raiser, and so that 1-year renewal gives us the opportunity, we couldn't move July 1 if we wanted to. And so that 1-year renewal gives us an opportunity to figure out what we want to do in FY '25.
which probably won't be cheap either way.
You talking new radios if we go to Cornelius? All new radios?
All that stuff, I don't even want to begin to talk about, because it's, whether it's Charlotte, whether it's Cornelius, whether it's secondary PSAP, there are multiple options, and I don't even know what the cost of that stuff would be now. Yes, sir.
Chief, do they give a reason for the severe jump in price? Or chief-elect? Chiefs?
It's a tag team.
November 23rd, I sent an email to CMPD asking them to start working on a contract because I knew it was expiring in July. So I thought that far out, we should be able to have some idea what we're going to be. So the major that I was dealing with, Major Jackson, said that they do everything through the city now. So they sent all the information over to Finance Department. They sent all their stats, and they sent it back. January, February, March, and April, I sent a reminder. He said, still haven't heard anything, still haven't heard anything. They got through all that. So what they're saying is that officer-initiated calls, citizen-initiated calls, and then they've got an IT, information technology services bill on that. So they're charging us so much per call that is a 911 call, so much less for an officer call, and then $1,717 per person per year for our officer license. And we're actually having a meeting with them Wednesday afternoon at 3:30. So this was literally just an email. I don't have a contract, anything like that. So we're just starting, basically.
Commissioner Kovacs.
Per call answered or just per call going in?
Per call that is put into the computer. So if we're dispatched, you got 14 911 calls, it's one call.
Need to get into dispatch business.
So can we share our displeasure at the fact that they are waiting till less than 2 months before the contract expires to,
I don't have an opinion about that.
I'm having an opinion about that.
That's the way government works.
That just seems unacceptable to
I
me.
tried
And I
that.
appreciate the fact that you started this
Yes,
process
that's what I
back
was
in
gonna say.
November.
I tried my best to get this as soon as possible.
And I appreciate that, and I'm sure the board appreciates that as well, is that you were trying to stay on top of it. Commissioner Phillips.
If we have 24/7 non-emergency people at the police department, would that help reduce the cost at all?
No, this is all 911 calls, crimes, officers stopping cars that are not affected.
Okay, because I know, dogs off leashes are also 911 calls. I don't know if there'd be anything to make it easier on y'all.
No, even after hours with animal control calls, we're not counting in our calls. This is
Okay,
gonna be
cool.
crimes.
Any other questions at this point? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move to the next item, and I'm sure Jackie's going to jump in a minute, but I'll start at the end of the sentence. So at the end of the sentence, one of the requests, and I think you probably heard this before, is hourly rate for part-time firefighters. I think the hourly rate on the low side, they have various tiers, is like $15.50. So what this would look to do is a raise at $15.50 up to tiers. I think one's $15.50. I can't remember, $16.50 and maybe $18.50 or so. I'd have to pull it back up, but ultimately do a $2 increase per hour on that. So the minimum would start at $17.50. That $2 per hour, excuse me, is roughly $572,000 impact. Does that sound about right? So $572,000 impact. I think the chief, we've been looking to try to continue to raise that. I mean, my daughter babysits for a minimum $15 an hour, and a lot of places $20 an hour. So we probably need to have someone better than my daughter ride the fire truck. So Yes, sir.
And that keeps us competitive with the other police departments, volunteer police departments?
Yes, sir. It should put us slightly ahead in some categories,
Say
area
that
towns.
their current salaries, I'm not sure what they'll fund in their
Right.
budget.
It could be, come back next year and say, well, they just raised theirs in the budget. And right now, it would put us very competitive with the others.
What's our attrition rate? Attrition rate with the fire department?
So if memory serves, he said that he keeps ballpark 120 positions for part-time staff, and he has about 100 filled right now, which kind of leads into the first part of the bullet point about firefighters.
I think it was 20% he was saying, sort of turnover or losing right now.
Turnover, yeah.
And the part that says firefighters, study, can you, what is the word?
We were going to jump into that. I started at the very end. I
Gotcha.
typically wouldn't go that way, but that one, something, that's in the budget. The $2 right now is in the budget, the extra 572 for that. The next two items, I'll just say, the first item, firefighters. If you recall, the chief said, hey, we need to be moving to full-time firefighters. Right now, what you'll see in the manager's recommended budget, and this will get to the study itself, I have $0 in there for full-time firefighters. The reason for that is, if you recall, the board said, hey, let's get together, look at this, determine how do we move down that path. And Jackie has met with, obviously, the chief and three of our board members, Commissioner Partee, Commissioner Boone, and Commissioner Kovacs, have served on that sort of committee to help guide us down the path of a study plan, internal study or plan. Jackie, please take it over.
Chief DeToley suggested when we had our retreat that he would recommend hiring 9 firefighters effective July 1st and 9 more January 1st of next year. And so the mayor suggested that 3 board members serve as what I'm going to call a subcommittee and be information gathering. Staff, I would say, scurried very quickly to start putting together information. How would that be treated for our insurance purposes? How would it be treated for their insurance purposes? Who might the League of Municipalities recommend that we hire? Do they have a preferred provider to draw a plan together how we might study merging a department? Laura and I have met with our insurance carrier multiple times. The fire department's insurance carrier, Emily's schedule allowed her to attend that meeting. Laura and I have met with the commissioners, so Chief DeToley made his recommendation at the end of January. Laura and I met with commissioners at the end of February, at the end of March, and we met last Friday. So do you happen to know, it's common knowledge most people are eligible for overtime after they work 40 hours a week. There is a different number that applies on police officers. There's an even still different number that applies on firefighters. And so whose personnel policy would govern? If they're our employees, would the fire department's standard operating general guidelines apply, or would ours apply? How would those employees be treated for bereavement pay and holiday pay and vacation pay and sick pay? And so the intimate details about how to work that out and what would apply has been a significant task. Hence, staff has told Anthony, we don't believe we can do a job we feel good about being able to hire the first employee July 1, so could we spend a little more time figuring out all the intimate details associated with the things that we've just discussed? And so it was discussed this past Friday. I'm willing for you to hear my version of that or hear from the 3 commissioners. So the League of Municipalities has a preferred provider that is an association of retired fire chiefs who is very happy to put together a study for us. They gave me a copy of the contract they have with a different municipality. They generally do a study that takes a little over a year. The price in the contract they signed with the contract they sent me was signed a little over a year ago, and it was $55,000, and they suggested inflation, everything's gone up since then, right? So He did not quote me what a rate would be. There are different phases of the project. I think there's at least 4, if memory serves. I can pull it and we can look. So rather than guarantee them a $55,000 contract, they would charge us an hourly rate, and if either party, if we decided we wanted out, we were finished after phase 1 or phase 2, certainly we could get out. And so we've talked about what we would recommend. I should also add that not only have we met with different safety consultants and different insurance providers, Laura and I have chatted with not just Chief DeToley, but some of his leadership team. He has multiple folks who serve on his staff, as you're well aware, who are what I'm going to refer to as full-time Charlotte firefighters and firefighters from other agencies. But we most recently met at least twice with Chief DeToley and 2 of his deputy chiefs and another member of their staff. And we discussed as recently as this past Friday, perhaps the most logical path forward might be to save that $55,000 to $60,000 and have the 2 staffs of both the fire department and the town work together on a plan and study how we might proceed forward with new employees. I'm gonna take a breath. Laura, please supplement the things that I've said with anything within your recommendation.
I think you covered it all.
Yes, ma'am.
I 100% don't support doing a study. Y'all did a study when my dad was on this board. I mean, stuff can be studied to death and we're throwing money away. And if 55, you might as well say 60,000 with inflation, if not 65,000. You could bump up the pay $5 an hour and that's 12,000 hours covered right there. And our fire staff is full of experts. You are an expert, and I rather trust the people in-house to do the right thing than to bring strangers in.
Well, you're exactly right, Ms. Hoffman, Commissioner Boone, Commissioner Kovacs, we met last Friday. And when I came into the meeting, my mindset was already made up as far as the opposition of having a outside consultant come in and having it done in-house. And sitting there, my mindset was to have it done in-house. Chief DeToley, his staff, the chief battalion chiefs, they've worked Huntersville for over the past several years. They know the nooks and crannies of Huntersville. They have already established a relationship with our community and with this board. And when we spoke with him when he was on the phone, the conference call, he was willing to do the study. And as Commissioner Phillips said, this will save us money. We don't have to expend that money to have somebody outside who's not familiar with our house here tell us how to run or how to form a full-time fire department. So I'm of the mindset, I'm in agreement to have Chief DeToley and his staff conduct the study.
Commissioner Boone?
Not a whole lot that I can add. I was here and part of the original study between Cornelius Davis and Huntersville. Cost the town $15,000 a town. The consultants never came to Huntersville. They just tied into our computer and got the information there, and $15,000. If you give me a couple days, I could probably find the nice presentation that they gave us in a spiral binder, but I'm not for it at all. Let's totally do it.
Commissioner Munger?
Jackie, in your opinion, between yourself, whatever other staff members would be necessary, and Chief DeToley and whatever other firefighters, do you have the capacity to be able to do this study in-house?
I think we are dedicated to a successful integration, and therefore, yes, sir, we will create the bandwidth.
Commissioner Kovacs, do you have anything you want to add? So I do have a question in regards to bandwidth, and when you get to that place of merging, right, and bringing it into under the town umbrella, who is going to be there to negotiate kind of the nuances where there may be friction?
The risk manager.
The risk manager? Right up there, it's up there, okay.
Let me handle that, if you don't
I'm
mind.
curious.
That was one of the questions we had where okay, I work for the city and you're a volunteer, Rob, and it's time to clean up the bathroom. Since you work for the city, you got to do it. That's going to be a conflict. And totally said, if we got a conflict of somebody following orders, we got more than a problem of who's going to clean what. So I kind of trust what Totally said, that not only the fire, but police and probably public works, if somebody asks you to do something, if you're going to hesitate to, no, I don't think I'm going to do this, then we've got a bigger problem than that.
I was thinking more the 30,000 foot, bringing it all together.
I feel like different people have brought different experts to the table. And I'm not, if there's one thing that I think every single one of them have agreed on, is that we are wise to preserve the model that we currently have for as long as possible, because it is saving our taxpayers millions of dollars every year. And so for the length of time that we can continue to have part-time staff those stations, that is an economical way for us to do it. What stays with me constantly is hearing Chief DeToley say, we initiated the part-time model 2001, so more than 20 years ago. I'm not sure he believed, I'm not sure he went in with a preconceived notion for how long that model might adequately staff the stations. However, I will tell you that there are few people in this room who have been affiliated with the town 20 years or longer. So in my professional judgment, we are wise to put together a plan to suggest this is what we think might and could happen, because I'm not sure the staff that you have here will be the staff that you will have if this model lasts another 20 years. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Cook.
I was gonna say, I was just gonna repeat something I said at our meeting on Friday. I don't believe spending $60,000 on a retired chief to tell us how to work the new fire department is worthwhile of $60,000 when we have a current chief that we're already paying that can do that work along with the rest of our staff. So it just seems redundant to waste money.
I'm looking at it two different, so I pull this dollars over here and I kind of sit them on a shelf. And I think, okay, well, how do we get the absolute best out of what we're trying to achieve? And then we can talk dollars next.
I agree
But
with that,
and I agree with you,
I just don't
$60,000
think an
is a lot
outside
of money.
person is the best way to go, similar to what Commissioner Partee said.
Right. Commissioner Munker?
You got better odds of them agreeing to implementation than you have of 6 commissioners and a mayor agreeing to a
Fair enough. Any other staff that want to kind of weigh in? I mean, Laura, what are your thoughts? Because I do think that, I mean, however, whatever transpires from this study will impact this community for decades to come. And so really want us to make sure that we're getting it right.
To echo Jackie's point, as far as bandwidth, I think I said it in one of our meetings. If you ask us to do it in July, I think that is beyond our bandwidth. If we have additional time to prioritize it, that makes it much easier, and I think we are committed to doing what we need to do to address the issue of having firefighters be able to respond in a timely manner and take care of what they need to take care of. The other piece that we've talked about is the contract pieces and making sure that we get all of the little pieces lined up. Some of it may be operational, some of it might be that higher level 13,000 foot view. And Emily has been very thoughtful in approaching some of those issues as we've gone through this. So I think, like I said, if you asked us to do it in July, I don't think we would have the clarity on everything that we need, but in January, we will be much better set to do that.
The League of Municipalities, you've heard me defend them regularly. They are a very good organization at risk identification and recommendations on risk mitigation, and that is a good thing. Emily and I, but more Emily than me, Emily has pointed out some things. We will need to revise our current agreement with them if we move this forward. And she's written you an email that says, and they have things in their bylaws that they need to update as well. And so this additional time will give us the time to work together to get those things done and identify as much risk as possible. We will never eliminate 100% of risk, and we won't if we hire the league's consultant. However, we will work at minimizing as much as we can.
So that's my segue to Emily, and just want to get you to weigh in too, since you'll be looking at those contracts, et cetera.
So I have no doubt that Chief Tolley is highly versed, well-versed in the day-to-day operations of operating a fire department. I think that there are some additional factors that I've laid out for you in that email, and I apologize for the length of it, that would need to be taken into consideration at any point in time when the town moves forward with a merger and or creating its own fire department. And as Jackie so aptly mentioned, there's no way to contemplate 100% of all the different hypotheticals that could transpire, but you do need to be aware of certain risk factors, certain triggers for litigation, and I don't think at this point in time that we have all of those factors hammered out. It's gonna take some time.
Okay. And so then my guess would be, if we're going to do this study in-house, that kind of the town staff team would be Jackie and Emily and Laura. Anyone else? Is that it? I meant town, and then Chief is, and his team. So you've got two different teams here sitting at the table.
Every draftee we think we need is gonna get a call.
Fair enough. Well, then, does everyone feel comfortable with continuing the study in-house?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
I think you've answered all my questions, so.
And like I say, I've put $0 in the budget for a study, because we're doing it now. The board has said, let's do it in-house. And I've put $0 in for paying for full-time firefighters, because we're not there yet. And I imagine there will be some hiccups that we have to work through. There's no way it's gonna be perfect.
I think my last question is, how long do you think this study will take? Are we looking at 9 months? Are we looking at 6 months? Are we looking at a year?
I would say, and this is, like I say, I put words in Jackie's mouth, but there's no way we'll be ready before January 1.
Okay.
And I would be shocked if we're ready to say full steam ahead January 1. I'm anticipating without rushing, making sure we dot all the i's, cross the t's. There's a lot of things to work through that I'm sure that all the brain trust in this room hadn't thought through yet, and they will come up. Most likely, I feel more comfortable with July 1 of 2025, ready to pull the trigger. But maybe sooner. If it does come before then, we would do a budget amendment.
July 1?
I'm saying we should have information back by January 1. I would say we'd probably be fleshing some of this stuff out with our fire committee. Well, if it's January, I'll be before then, and then elections come in November, but maybe dealing with different folks. But before we're ready to come full-time 18 people, there's no way I could hire 18 people by January 1. No way possible.
I think perhaps just a point of clarification, you said by July 1, 2025. Did you mean 24 possibly?
Yes. Sorry, I'm thinking FY 25.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what Lance and I figured out.
And if we get sooner, great. If the committee works through this and it's all a piece of cake, awesome. We'll come back to you fast as we can, but it's a lot of work.
Okay.
So just,
One more bullet?
we got more bullets, another page. So
Sorry.
there's one more page, but I don't anticipate us, unless you want to stay here to 7:30 or whatever time, 7, we'll take that long. So right now, in employee raises, just looking at COLA, several years back, we sort of moved to, okay, whatever the COLA is what the COLA is. Anthony, don't sugarcoat it, don't put some magic number in here on the COLA. So Jackie runs a sheet every year, and Jackie can tell you exactly where that comes from. But just give you an idea of what the annual COLA has been, literally from 2012 to 2022, 2022 being the 8% for the year, but it ranges from 2.1, 1.5, 1.6, 0.1, 1.3, 2.1, 2.4, 1.8, 1.2, and then last year was 4.7, and this year 8. This is not something that Anthony makes up or Jackie. You know, cost of eggs, I'm being simplistic, cost of eggs go up, down, gas up, down throughout the year, et cetera. And then for the annual number, we pull it off this sheet. I don't sugarcoat
So
it.
what you're quoting to them is the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics CPI number.
You got it.
In FY, so in the most recent years, since we've been told to look at CPI every single year rather than COLA every other year, we've been doing that on a calendar year basis so that we're not looking prospectively for what we might, how COLA might, CPI might change between now and June 30. We look at a calendar year, January to December, so we can tell you in 2022, CPI moved by X, so we're recommending we move, we implement a cost of living adjustment that is exactly that same number.
And last year was 4.7, which is a number I think the board may have went up a little higher.
And we bumped it to 5.
About 5. So
And this chart you have in front of you says that FY22 number was exactly 8, hence the request for a COLA of 8.
yes, and the COLA is tied to our ranges too. So we, when we do a COLA adjustment, we move the ranges so that, you know, as entry level folks coming in, moves that number up on the entry level folks too. So our ranges move. I think, for instance, for police, I'm gonna use them for example. Our bottom range on that is what, 48 now is the entry level hire, somewhere 40, 40, almost 49. So with this, we'll move it up into 51-ish or so, somewhere around there. I don't have an exact number in front of me, but you know, that just gives you an example to be competitive.
I'm not sure this group wants it, but for the first time, so we have been, if we increase an employee's salary by the COLA, we've also increased the ranges by the COLA. That makes it difficult for people to progress through the range. So in FY24, you remember the consultant that we had who looked at our ranges that she came and talked to you recently. We're unlikely to move the minimum and the maximum by exactly this 8%. But this 8% is the amount that we would fund the change to employee rates of pay.
So for instance, the starting salary of a police officer would move from the 49 to 51 change or whatever. But we would move the range more like probably 5%.
Yes.
Remember, we had the study come in, some of our ranges are like this. They need to really come in like that.
And you never really get to work through the range as you keep moving it. Commissioner Munger?
You kind of, I think you kind of covered it, but can you, in general, why is it important to give an 8% COLA as opposed to an 8% merit? Is it more than just the ranges, or?
Well, COLA's,
I'm trying to understand that one.
COLA's, you know, grocery, you know, I'm sure your groceries and everything went up this year, so COLA's tied to cost of living, you know, true cost of living. So if like on a firefighter, if they were an employee or a police officer, you know, if merit-based, or we're gonna merit-base that police officer for writing a bunch of tickets. Maybe, you know, probably the best not to write any tickets because we don't get to keep any of those funds. They'll go somewhere else. So if it was like some states where you keep all the funds, yeah, maybe you should, because then we keep all that revenue and you merit-base them. But so someone like that, or I don't know, one of Kevin's employees out there working a shovel, maybe he dug a few more holes in the other man or woman. So how do you merit-base something like that? So you typically what you want to do on a COLA, and the COLA can be super low. Some of the numbers one of the years is 0.1. Most of the years are 1.2, 2 point something. Only the last 2 years have the COLA been above 3%. And so we have tied that to the ranges, the COLA to the ranges. We've also, that's something that's, groceries go up, gas goes up, goes down, it's a true indicator. You should have some type of merit base in there, at least some, portion. A lot of times your merit base is based on, if you've got a high year COLA, merit is gonna be 2% or less, because it's a high COLA year. If you've got a low COLA year, you may see town managers go with a higher merit. And so when I look at all the, we have managers meeting, I was on a call today. If you look at what you're gonna see from the other managers, it's gonna be a mix. It's gonna be around 8%, 7.5 to 11%, whether it's COLA, merit. Some have a different philosophy, but when you add them together, it's gonna be 8%. Some, I think Bible was looking at like 11. Cornelius is looking at 8. Davison's looking at, I think, 8. Matthews did a huge study last year where they spent like $2.2 million, to bump everything up, and then they're looking at more like a 3%. But they did a mid-year big influx mid-year off of a study. So those are just some of the numbers. We continue to talk about that. Even on the tax rates, I kind of know what I think other folks are going to do on tax rate. I will tell you, based on the 7 towns, and you're going to see that sheet in a minute, even the tax rate, and that doesn't mean we have to do anything. Some of them, a lot of them are double-digit percentages.
I'm just gonna clarify something a little bit, because my understanding, COLA versus merit, perhaps try to fit it a little bit more in terms of the range. When we do a COLA increase, it shifts the entire range, whereas if we do a merit, it shifts the person within the range. And that end, it pushes more people closer to that end and gives us less flexibility in terms of being able to offer them better pay range, and it also hinders us in terms of being competitive with other towns if we keep that range down here. Whereas if we move the COLA, it gives us greater flexibility, and it makes us look more competitive in comparison to other towns. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but keep that in mind in terms of whether or not we determine to give employees more COLA versus more merit, because this was a misunderstanding I had last year in that I was thinking merit's more important, but shifting that range makes us more competitive against everyone else, and it also allows managers a greater flexibility in terms of being able to put their employees in an appropriate slot.
Yeah, and what I would say, probably 4 years ago, we had to do some major adjustments, 4 to 5 years ago, some major adjustments to try to clean some of that up, because we were de facto calling it COLA 1 year, merit 1 year, COLA 1 year, merit 1 year. When in reality, it wasn't. They were all just saying the same thing. But we got behind there, and I can't remember the numbers, but we had to do a major influx to make some corrections. And that's when I think the board decided, you know what, we need to start doing something with the ranges and tying something to COLA. But, so.
Anthony, I'd ask Jackie if she could talk to what compression means with this 8%, 2%.
Compression is the idea that if we wanted to give everybody an across-the-board dollar figure instead of a percentage, if you don't move the bottom of the range occasionally, then you're not going to compare favorably with other people, or when you look at a police officer or a planner's salary here versus, say, a Charlotte or a Cornelius. But if you just award a $2,000 raise to the people who make less than $50,000 a year, then they're going to be bumping up your 1 or 2 year tenured employee is going to be bumping up against your 3 and 5 year employee. And if you don't continue to move throughout the range, if there's no value in staying with you, why wouldn't somebody just leave? Why wouldn't they leave, go work someplace else for a year or two, and if you're an awesome employer, they want to come back, you hire them back. If the only way to move through your range is to leave, people will leave you and hopefully come back, but what if they don't? Then you've lost that institutional knowledge and experience. I'm sure I didn't do near that justice the way Laura could have, but you don't want somebody who's been with you 3 years to be making exactly what somebody who's been working for you 6 years makes.
What I would tell you, so just so you'll know, that you remember these numbers as you're thinking through this. Every 1%, whether it's merit or COLA, is roughly $210,000. Somebody will ask me that, so I might as well just tell you now. So every 1%, no matter whether it's merit, COLA, same thing, costs $210,000, roughly. That's a round number. So what you'll see, in the manager's recommended budget right now, is May 1st, which next Monday, I guess it is 8 COLA. And the COLA is, like I said, right off the sheet. Merit is, 2% merit would be, the, average merit you can get.
You said you had another page?
I do. So here's what you really want to get to, I bet. I think this last page, let me just make sure,
Yep.
yes. All right, so, revenue neutral, I think some of y'all have asked me this already, or Jackie and Patty, the Brain Trust is 17.6 cent. As I told you earlier, I think way early in the game, I was talking the first number probably needed to be a 2. Obviously, as we get more information in, as we learn our growth, what's the appeals, et cetera. Right now, we're at 19 cents. As I told you, that's about 8%, maybe 7.95, something like that. What does 1 penny generate? I think it used to generate like $1.010 million or something like that. 1 penny generates with reval 1.5 million. And I think some of you may have asked, or typically you ask these type questions. What does on an old value $250,000 house, and you had a 42% increase, that jumps it up to $355. Sort of what's that impact on a homeowner? At 19 cents is another $75 annually. So if you just say, well, I've got $500,000 house, and then you just double it. Just for simple math. Kind of use what is the impact? Now in the county, the county's going to do, and I can tell you what I think other towns are going to do, but they're in the same boat. We'll be wrestling with items just like you will be wrestling with items.
I did not pull up a single person's individual value to do this. I'd like to speak a little bit to the theory behind this. The county tells us that our average increase net of what they estimate will be our appeals loss is 42%. So I just said, if your home happened to be valued at $250 in the old value, and if it went up the average amount, whose average? There's gonna be people that went up 40%, there'll be people who went up 25, and there's probably people who went up 60. And so this is a math problem for me. It's an Excel document. I got it pulled up here. If y'all wanna tell me your numbers, I'm happy to put it in. That's my good time. But if your home was valued at $250 and if it went up the average value 42%, your new value is $355. So what's the tax amount you paid at 24 cents at $250, and what's the tax amount? Clearly, I ignored the solid waste fee, and I absolutely ignored the county. I don't know if the county's going revenue neutral or not. So if your what's your new tax at $355 times 19 cents? And so the difference between those two numbers is $74.50 annually. $662, I think, monthly, whatever. I'm happy to calculate this as many different scenarios as you want to see, but that's what that's about.
What I would say, we'll just continue chatting a little bit about what I'm hearing, like I say, from other towns. I think there's maybe one, possibly two, looking at revenue neutral. The others are double-digit increases. When I say double-digit increases, when I told you a minute ago 17.6 to 19 is roughly 8%. Others are some in the 10s, some in the 20s% increase. But who knows how that'll shake out.
That last bullet point we never talk about. So you get your invitation to renew with your tag renewal every year, and your vehicle value theoretically is probably going down $1,000 or $2,000 every year. Your vehicle value is subject to change every single year, not just in revale year. Well, the county gives us our total value. revenue neutral on our total value for, unless you bought a car, traded up a $20,000 car for a $40,000 car, that way you probably pay more, but you're generally speaking going to pay less in the reval year in tax on your vehicle, which is gonna offset that real, just a little bit.
And two last things I would say, on, as I said earlier, there are no debt service payments in here for bonds. And trying to remember, is there a debt service payment in here for town hall?
Yes.
Okay, just one of those.
1.5.
1.5 million. Now, obviously, as we're moving forward, there will be some tough decisions to be made. July-ish, maybe timeframe, but we'll be coming back to you, is reiterate. This board told us to keep moving forward, we're spending money on town hall. I don't know exactly how much we spent so far, off the top of my head, but, we set aside, $2 or $3 million to move that forward, but eventually we're gonna be coming back, maybe July's timeframe, and have some options for you to get even deeper, i.e. maybe like ordering steel and stuff like that, pre-ordering steel and things like that. That's when we get into serious millions of dollars, but that's just part of the process. But I just want to let you know what's in the budget, so big ticket items that are in the budget or not.
Commissioner Partee.
Overall, Mr. Roberts, including the county, because this excludes impact of the county rate, approximately, what would the county and our town rate be when I look at my tax bill?
So the existing county tax rate now, what's that?
61.
We're around 61, not including any of this, depending where you are. Speaking of you personally, because
61
you
is
may have
61.
fire and police tax if you're,
Exactly.
out of the county and out of town, but, and if, I'm trying to remember, someone may have told me what their potential revenue neutral rate is, 45 is what I heard. is their
45.
revenue neutral rate, but I have not talked to Dina to find out what she's proposing at this point in time.
So when John Q. Citizen looks at their tax bill, they won't see that 17.6 cents. They'll see the combine of county and town.
It'll be broken
Individual will
down.
be individual? Okay, that tells you, I don't look at my
Well, a
tax
lot of
bill.
times, to be honest with you, a lot of times, if,
Yeah.
you get the total bill, and pay the total bill, and like,
Right, right.
even
Okay.
though a lot of times we'll get the blame for they know Huntersville, but they don't.
Yeah, but
you
not
know,
every person's gonna
realize
go
that.
online and look up their tax rate. They're just gonna see what the overall combination's gonna be, so.
Get it in the mail.
The voters do.
And one other thing too, while it's hot on my mind, is, when we were talking about, solid waste earlier, we are increasing that fee as the board had sort of told us to stick with that sort of 60, covering 61%, I think. We were at 126, and we're increasing that to 144, and that covers approximately 61%. I think that was the direction the board had given us, back January-ish.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I told you that also.
Yeah.
I'll stop.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Munger.
Sure, I'm chatty always. In Mecklenburg County and/or the greater area beyond Mecklenburg County, 19 cents sounds like possibly the lowest anywhere. Would that be accurate?
Probably not. What I would say is, Cornelius is going to be pretty tight.
Okay.
I mean, between us and Cornelius, any of the other towns that will be that low is, will be some of the towns that may not have all the services. Maybe the Indian Trail or something that may contract that on police or something like that to the sheriff's department. But there won't be, there'll be very, in the whole state of North Carolina, there'll be very few unless they're a paper town that just basically has zoning.
Yeah. Similar size, Apex. Apex always comes to mind. Do we know what their tax rate?
interesting to see that number.
And we can get all those, I used to have, I have to look at it here, I can have, all the down population. But it comes down to what kind of services, as we get into, obviously, more full-time fire, it costs more money. So as you see more services, if you're water and sewer and fire and police, the big, more expensive services, that's where those tax rates tend to be a little bit higher.
Any other questions? Okay, well, we've got our briefing. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Sure, I missed something, but that's probably enough to make you hit for the number.
So at the May 1st meeting, you will be presenting the manager's recommended budget.
You'll do a PowerPoint, more of a PowerPoint type
And will
presentation.
we have a pre-meeting for that?
We have a pre-meeting, Janet was asking me earlier, do we have anything yet on that? I've got to look back at the list of the various things, I'm not sure yet, but I would assume, I'm gonna make the assumption that the board would want some type of workshop, after the manager's recommended budget to, ask you some more items, et cetera, the public hearing, the 15th, and we will look at it now, so those meeting dates are getting closer and closer to tight.
Well, one of the reasons I asked about the pre-meeting is that we still need to make a decision on the dollar amount for the bond package.
We could do that May 1st if you're ready to have, to nail that down, but hopefully I can get some of you in the room to maybe coalesce, come up with that number. And, but we could put that on if the board would like.
Well, I would just hope that this board would work together to figure out what that number is. I think it works better for our community when you all come together and lead from the front. So I would love to see you all start having those conversations as quickly as possible so that we can nail that down. Anything else?
Thank staff. Easy for me to read words up here, good staff, but all else goes.
Well, I certainly want to take a second to thank all of the staff that are sitting in this room this evening. Thank all of you for being here. And we look forward to our future conversations around the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor?
Hey, you too.
All right, good night, Huntersville.